Hey, security peeps, we are live with another edition of Breaking Into Cybersecurity. And this is a very special edition, our monthly session with Federal Career Connections. I am Renee Small, cybersecurity super recruiter, helping awesome leaders hire great talent. And today we have Katherine Casey Coffman here with us from a board member from the Federal Career Connection. So welcome, Casey.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being a part of this event tonight. So as we jump into hot topics, I want everyone to know this is a frequently asked question, Q&A session, ask me anything session. Casey is here. She brings a wealth of knowledge and experience, a former C-suite executive, I read your bio, Casey. It's too long for me to, to talk through, but so much amazing experience in the federal government. If you would like to share, at a very high level, I know you coach, you do so many different things at a high level, a little bit about yourself, that would be great before we jump into some of the Q&A.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Casey Coffman. I go by my initials. It's because when I was working with the Marine Corps as GS3, I would answer the phone Casey, and it was Katherine Coffman, and it sounded like Captain Coffman. And people would get irritated. I wasn't a captain, and I wasn't in the military. So I began going by my initials. But I worked in the federal government for 33 years, started as a GS3 entry clerk typist. And the last 9 years, I was a senior executive. I ran the Human Resources Program for Customs and Border Protection for a number of years, and I retired as the IRS Human Capital Officer. I've worked for the Navy, Marine Corps, Defense Intelligence Agency, IRS, and Customs and Border Protection. Lived overseas for 10 years on 3 different tours. But I retired about 3 years ago. And the reason why I'm here is because I really enjoy helping people find employment with the federal government. It's a great career. So with that, Renee, let's get started.
That is amazing. I remember meeting you when we had all of the board members for Federal Career Connection, and when you said Katherine Casey because of Captain Coffman, I thought that was pretty funny. But you bring such a wealth of experience across so many various agencies that I know that this is going to be invaluable for folks, especially those looking to break in. So as you've had so many roles in so many various agencies, did you see a theme? Like, is there anything that was common in terms of people trying to get into any agency in particular that was tougher than others, ones that are a little bit easier to break into? Do you have any insight in that space?
I think the insight that I bring is because I've worked for what's called the competitive service, the regular organizations that you think of, Department of Defense, Air Force, Army. But there's also another wide range of opportunities, and that's in the intelligence community. And oftentimes when people are looking for a federal job, their go-to website is usajobs.gov. And that makes sense because the federal government requires competitive announcements to be posted on that website. However, there is a whole opportunity that is often overlooked because people are not familiar with how to apply or where to even begin looking for jobs with the intelligence community. And there's 13 agencies that belong in the intelligence community. So that's a lot of opportunities that might be missed.
Wow. That's very interesting because I know as someone that's not a part of the federal government, that's the very first place I would go. And that's where people tend to tell you to go, right? USA Jobs. But so you're saying that we should, or anyone that's looking should be going to each individual agency's site?
No, and that's the beauty of it. There is one website, and I'm going to look at the website to make sure I get it accurately. And it's, of course, the 3 W's, right? Intelligencecareers.gov. So it's intelligence careers, one word, careers.gov. And this is where you can look for careers in the intelligence, quote unquote, IC career fields. Intelligence is made up of 13 different agencies, which includes part of the Department of Defense as well. But you have your CIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, and on and on. So these are great opportunities. But yeah, looking at other agencies specifically, like the FBI and many others, going to their websites is very, very effective as well.
Wow. So, okay, so this is something brand spanking new that I learned. And what
there you go.
I love having you all on because every single time I learn something new. So intelligencecareers.gov, I had no idea this even existed, and has 13 agencies all under this. So this is purely for intelligence. So this is in the intelligence community, but it's any type of role in the intelligence community in those 13 agencies, or is it a specific type of role?
Any role. And there is a beautiful tool on this specific website, because I'm sure many of your participants will talk about USA Jobs. So let's just focus for a minute on the intelligence area, because the career interest is in cybersecurity. And you can believe that there are many different opportunities in the cyber area in the intelligence community as well. Mm-hmm. So if you go to that website and called intelligencecareer.gov, in the top left-hand corner, there's going to be a big blue box, and it says Job Exploration Tool, Start Now. And are you a match? And there are only 13 questions that the applicant needs to address. And they're really great questions. What kind of education do you have? What are your certificate? What's your area of expertise? What grade level? What hours do you want to work? Do you want to work on the weekend? Do you want to travel? What kind of team or what kind of work environment do you want? Do you want to work individually or with teams? But there's only 13 questions. And one of them, of course, is, are you a U.S. citizen? But with the results of those 13 questions, instantly, you will get various recommendations on career fields that match your area of interest. So you might say, like, I've worked in HR my whole career. Well, maybe not the first 3 or 4 years, but really 30 years of HR. And so if I was to go on there, I would look at HR. But there would be all sorts of other opportunities that would come up as good ideas for me to consider, such as business operation, program management, and a variety of others. So it also gives the person looking for a job really some interesting insights to their skills and what value and what broad opportunities that are available. Because it doesn't have to be, I've always been in HR, therefore I always will be. That's not the case. And it could be for IT or whatever.
That's awesome. That's such great advice and information. Intelligencecareers.gov. Have a couple people hanging out here. Clarence says, great. He loves it. Alex is here. Hi, Casey. Hi, Renee. Hey, Alex Harrington. Alex is the reason why we are here today, the guru behind, the magician behind Federal Career Connections. So thank you, Alex, for allowing us to make this happen. So Casey, that's such insightful information. So while you're on, it's on intelligencecareers.gov, not usajobs.gov, correct?
Not usajobs.gov.
Right. So intelligence careers, you have those 13 questions. You can pretty much answer them. And is it a quick survey? Does it take a long time?
It's a quick survey. Are you a U.S. citizen? What type of education? And it has drop-down menus, and you have multiple options to select what areas of interest or expertise, education, training, and so long. It's just it's just very fast and informative. And then it gives you options of going to the different agencies: Defense Intelligence, Homeland Security, National Geospatial Intelligence, National Reconnaissance, National Security Agency, and so forth. There's also, what's not listed on either one of them is the State Department. U.S. State Department is a huge agency, and the FBI. So they also have cybersecurity. So it's really worthwhile looking at the different agencies that you're interested in, not only going to their specific websites, but also looking at the intelligence website and, of course, USA Jobs.
Right. So David Brent says, I guess is the third one online. I should say hello. Hello, David. We are all here. So Casey, how does it work for interns? So I mean, you were a chief HRO, so this is like really, really exciting for me, if not anyone else. The folks I work with a lot of young people who are thinking about breaking into, they're still trying to figure out what they want to do. And so if you're a high school student, like how young can a person start to look at careers in the federal government? I know there are internship opportunities, but I'm curious as to, are they only college age internships? Are there internships for high school students? Like, how does that work? Are there co-ops? Are there things that younger people, shadow opportunities, things like that for maybe even middle school students? Can you share any insight on that?
Yeah, as far as paid and unpaid, there's child labor laws, and so you're looking at age 16 and above. But
okay.
As far as high school entry, really recommend that the student go to their high school counselor or career focus, whatever the current terminology nomenclature is for their career resources at the high school level, because oftentimes schools will have agreements with federal agencies. And if students go right to the federal agencies, the person that we're talking to might not be aware of that partnership. So if they're in high school or in college, it's very, very useful to do that, because there are some schools that have that support where they'll bring in interns from a specific university to a federal agency, like EPA, Employment Protection Agency, has an agreement with a couple of universities. IRS has agreements with a variety of universities around the country. So having that aspect of going there, I have to say, you touched on a real hotspot and a concern of mine, a real important concern that I've had. I was hired as an intern eventually once I got my degree. It took me 11 years from high school to get my bachelor's degree. As a military spouse, traveling, having kids, having life, I couldn't decide if I even wanted to work. But anyway, it took me 11 years. But once I finished that, I was able to get an intern position. 10, 15 years ago, the government was hiring anywhere between 15 and 20,000 interns in a year. And the numbers that we had last year for people younger than 20, it was less than 200. And so there's a huge, huge concern that I personally have, is that agencies are not hiring students and interns like they could and should. And so when you look at the federal job, and so I did bring up their website, just to look to see, okay, if we're going to look for a cyber position, for example, they had over 400 jobs with using the term cyber. But if I do intern, there's a little over 1,000, about 1,200. But I would argue that they're not all interns. However, how many people do they actually hire is the challenge. So the best thing, not to be a doom and gloom, the best thing that if you're talking and working with people who are interns, one is looking at both USA Jobs and specifically the intelligence communities, because they both have paid and unpaid intern programs, but also looking at the organizations, the agencies' website, because oftentimes like the State Department, for example, they'll advertise their intern programs on their website. And often agencies will just hire interns January, February, March, but they won't bring them on until like the spring break and then summer. Yeah, so they do like twice a year hiring, so that we can get students on board. And so they're temporary or maybe term appointments, and then that could lead to not only the experience, but maybe a permanent appointment.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had heard, I'm definitely going to talk to you offline about that, especially the high school component. Is like I said, I work with some young ladies and definitely want to, dig deeper into which schools partner, because I do understand that there are school partnerships and what have you, but definitely I know college level is a little bit different than the high school level. So that's an area I'm passionate about, getting more young people into that space. So I will be talking to you offline about that.
Sure.
A couple comments here before we move on. Crystal, hey Crystal, says we're so excited and blessed to hear from federal hiring expert Casey Coffman. Yeah, she truly is the expert. And then Tony Thomas wants to know if Alex is hiring entry level people. So Alex, are you hiring? Tony, if Alex is not hiring, do all the things that Casey is saying. Go to intelligencecareers.gov, fill out those 13 questions, get yourself in through that channel, since it has 13 questions, but there's 13, you said 13 agencies, right? Not 15, 13 agencies that have all of their jobs listed here for the intelligence community. So I learned something new today with that. Again, folks, if you have any other questions, please let us know as we chat with KC, who is coming with a huge wealth of knowledge in this space. So KC, you probably have heard, it's all over the news now. And I brought it up a few months ago, and I said to my podcast co-host, I said, yeah, there's this thing coming up called a Great Resignation. And they brushed me off and said, I don't believe that. And now months later, it's all over the news. It's all over, every other article. It's been coined as the Great Resignation, where so many people are moving into different opportunities. And I wanted to know if you had any insight of what is happening in terms of the federal government, if people are leaving the federal government and going outside, or is there movement within? Is there, can you give us any insight on if you know of anything that's happening?
Like you, I'm on the outside because I retired 3 years ago, actually. But what I do is read. I stay on top of government exec and a number of other areas. There's a number of really good reports about women in employment or federal employment. There's a variety of sources, so you can get some really good information. So that's what I like to do, is just stay informed in that way. But no matter what the exodus is, it's happening for the federal government as well as the private industry. And what my recommendations are for people who are current federal employees looking for other jobs, it's easier to get a new job if you have a job. So if you're a federal employee and you're still looking for an opportunity within the federal government and you think, well, should I just quit and then come back in the door? Really recommend that you give yourself some time to do that search and not to quit, because it's really more, the research shows that it's more useful, more effective to get a new job when you still are an employee at an organization. And the other is, if you're a federal employee or not a federal employee and you're thinking about resigning as part of this resignation, you might be thinking about why. Why is it that you're leaving? And is there anything that you would want to ask your employer about? Like, for example, doesn't matter if you're a male or female, but if you're at home and you are taking care of family members, children, adults, whatever it might be, and it's hard to fill the day working an 8-hour-a-day job and also carry on those responsibilities of being a provider for children and adults. So what you might want to consider is looking at if it's the challenge of trying to get it all done, which is, in my view, pretty difficult, if not impossible. You might consider, is there something that you'd like to ask, like reducing your hours? Instead of working 40 hours a week, is it possible to work 25 or 30? The government used to have part-time jobs all over the place. And now we as federal employers don't offer part-time jobs like we used to. And this is an ideal situation where people can job share, or offer part-time jobs to help retain the skills. And so, for example, when I was in Okinawa, Japan, I don't know, like 40 years ago, I worked part-time. I job shared. I was a GS3 at a family service center, and I worked 2.5 days a week, and somebody else did the job the other 2.5 days. But part-time job sharing is something that used to be very, very prevalent and is not a tool that's often used. And so thinking about, could you reduce your hours instead of eliminating your employment, might be an option. The other is there more flexibility and bandwidth in the day instead of doing the 8 to 5 type of typical job? Is it possible to start a little earlier and go in the evening and have these gaps, or even extend it into Saturday? Don't want to give up your whole weekend, but what flexibilities might work with you? And I just say employees are in a very powerful position to go back and negotiate working conditions. What kind of conditions of employment are we really wanting to have? And is there anything that you would like to ask for to negotiate? If you have a student loan, ask for one of the benefits that the government can offer is payment of your student loan. And so there's some room for negotiation, and that might be something that you would want to consider instead of just leaving. But why really, really looking at what's the pain of staying and what's the gain of staying, and what's the pain of going to a new organization and what's the gain.
That's such a valid point. I think that, and that's what I've been reading about in articles as well, in terms of like, why people are resigning and why, obviously it's happening in droves. It's happening all at once, but really looking at and asking that question and looking at the flexibility options, the various options, and how easy it is to get, unless it's unbearable, I'm with you. Don't quit unless you have something else lined up. If you really need the employment. So that's really, really good advice. Tony says here, he was taking notes from Casey and he thanks us both. You are welcome, Tony. It's awesome. So Casey, another question that I had was in regards to, we talked about the hot jobs, or we talked about usajobs.gov, found that cool website, intelligencecareers.gov. Are there any others? Like every once in a while, we'll have some folks that, most of the folks that our audience, most of the folks in our audience are cyber. But if they're not cyber and they happen to be coming in and checking us out and just wanting to get into federal careers, are there any other kind of quick tips like intelligence careers that we wouldn't know about that you could share with us?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So oftentimes people have been in the military, right? Have worked in the military, and they're not really sure how to translate their experience into a federal career. And so there are so many similarities and differences that are really helpful to know about. So one amazing website that's very, very helpful, especially for people who have worked in the military, who've served in the military, I should say. I've been married to a Marine for 43 years, so I should say the right term. So excuse me. And Alex, it's off as a Marine. One the website, again, you got your 3 W's, and it's called One TON line. Now, I'm not sure what that word is, one ton line. It's on, so it's triple W's dot ONETONLINE.org. And this is an occupational information network, and it's called ONET as an acronym. But what ONET does, it will provide military members a crosswalk of their MOS, or whatever the term of art is for the branches of the military, of what their career field is. And it puts it in very clear language of what their responsibilities were. And there's long lists of all the different career fields, and it will get very specific to that MOS. And then it will give great advice on how they can address that experience in bullet statements for their resume, and what types of skills they use, what kind of training that they may have typically had in that career field and so forth. And then you can take that and look to see what other career fields you might be interested in, and it makes some suggestions. So there's a really nice crosswalk on that website specifically for the military. It's good for people who are not in the military. If you're working from private industry and you've worked for a communications organization, banking, or whatever type of career organization from an IT perspective or cyber perspective, you can go to this website, type in the title of the job that you have or had, and it will give you the different descriptions of a variety of things. It's a real rich website, and it will give you experience and give you an explanation of what a new career field might be. If you don't know what cybersecurity is, it will also give you lots of insight on the different types of careers available in the cyber area.
Wonderful. That is awesome. onetonline.org. I have seen this one before. And I think I know I've touched on it, but the explanation that you gave is fantastic. And it's always good to kind of, especially like you said, with the military folks that are coming, military veterans, there are so many in the cyber community. And it's so funny. Before I'm from New York, and I didn't know many people in the military in New York, and then I come to DC and like my whole world military, which is phenomenal. And I've learned a ton in this space. So it's my absolute pleasure helping out veterans and helping folks break into the industry. So I'm glad that you brought this one up, because we do have a huge veteran population that watches. So let's see.
And I would just also add, the Federal Career Connection, not that I'm happy to be on the board and that Alex is on the site, but the website has a great amount of information, such as how to write a resume, how to write it from your military experience, or how to write it with your intern experience, what verbs to use and things to do and not do. And they have a nice 1 page or page and a half summary of websites that are very useful. So just want to highlight the Federal Career Connections website that has a tremendous amount of useful information.
And I just want to be sure, it's federalcareerconnection.org, right? Not .com, .org. I always post that one up. InfoSec Live says, this is awesome. I actually think this is thank you, InfoSec Live. Today, I am like, I'm the student for real today, because this is a space that is so very interesting. So federalcareerconnection.org, obviously, folks, this is our partner tonight, Breaking Into Cybersecurity and Federal Career Connection. We get together the last Wednesday of every month, and we do these at 7 p.m. with all these amazing guests who come on and talk about all these various components of breaking into the federal government. So, and Alex put it up here as well for the folks on LinkedIn, federalcareerconnection.org. Make sure you come on. And Federal Career Connection, with me, it's or with Breaking Into Cyber, it's once a month. But you all have events happening like almost every week or every 2 weeks, where you have run these workshops. There's so much information and so many virtual workshops. And so please, I encourage everyone to connect with Federal Career Connection on LinkedIn. Go on the website, register for some webinars. I actually was listening. I was in the audience a few weeks ago when there was a webinar on, I think it was the Department of Labor or the Bureau of Labor Statistics, had a couple folks come on and kind of talk about the different stats, which is very, very interesting, and upcoming careers, what's trending, what's going to be what roles are coming up that they will need people, the federal government and just the country will need people. So Alex is saying there are 2 events left. We have 2 events left for the year, Alex, November, December. So 2 events left. So folks, please go federalcareerconnection.org and connect over there. Yep, 2 events left this year. All right. So more questions here. So Casey, what would you say are some key things that folks should focus on when they're applying to federal jobs? And I know you gave us some tips that I wasn't aware of, like the website. Which website is the intelligencecareers.gov website that had 13 questions. Are there any other things that folks should focus on if they're brand new, just trying to break in? I'm even thinking about some of these teens. What are some things that they should be focused on when trying to break into a federal career?
Okay. So one is about where to find the jobs, and the other is, what does your resume look like? And your resume is a real important reflection of who you are and what you bring to the table, even what your desires are. So depending on being interested in an intern or applying for a senior executive position, from the entry to the top of the career field in the federal government, your resume is a direct reflection. So one of the things to do is really focus on what's the story that you're telling about what you'd like to do, what your interests are, what your experiences are. There's a lot of websites that give great advice about how to write resumes. But in the end, your format, the spelling, the punctuation, the structure of your sentences really have a reflection on who you are. So what is helpful is having somebody else take a look at it. And it's dreadful. I always dreaded handing my resume to my husband or a peer or someone. But foolishly, I would blindly upload my resume to a website thinking someone's going to, of course, hire me. And that was never the case. But I didn't want someone that I respected or worked with, or my husband, to look at it and go, "Oh, Casey, don't you know how to spell border?" I used to work for Customs and Border Protection, and often I would misspell border. And that's just, so my point is, your resume is a reflection. So you really have to have someone take a look at it, no matter what the content is, having it looked at, and not being afraid to get that feedback. But really, the another thing to do is let people know you're looking. The people that you go to church with, the people you play sports with, your neighbors, let them know that you're interested. Even if you're currently working for an organization and you want to go, oftentimes you can find opportunities through networking and not just searching through www.anything. So the networking world is really important. Working for the federal government, you'll still have to apply, but oftentimes jobs can be open for a few days, maybe 2 weeks, or for a great period of time. And also looking for job fairs. There's many job fairs that are open virtually nowadays. And so looking at where those job fairs are at are great opportunities to find out what's available and to network. I'll pause there. Is anything coming up with you? Any questions on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is fantastic. And I know I've seen some job fairs posted. I've seen a couple on LinkedIn, I see them posted. A couple points that you made, one about the resume, and that even you
oh yeah, of course.
This one thing, and it happens, right? There's some words that we just, our brain, our eyes, whatever it is, and we don't catch it, and someone else catches it. So that's such a good point, to be able to have someone review your resume, regardless of what what background you're in, just as another pair of eyes to read it and make sure it makes sense to the other person. I know in technology we have sometimes very long resumes that it makes no sense to anyone but the person that is that has it. So that's very, very good advice. And I know that Federal Career Connections helps with that too. So another plug for Federal Career Connection when it comes to the resume. And then the component about the career fairs is also very important, because I know I had heard about some, I forget what it's called, but some career fairs where they make a decision like on the spot. Yes. And I don't know if that happens in the federal government as well, where, you could be there and interview and potentially get moved along in the process.
Yes,
pretty immediately.
And especially in the cyber fields, because organizations that if they have a difficult time to hire people, and this is one of those career fields, they have what's called direct hire authority. So what that means is it makes it very easy to directly hire individuals. And so having the job posted, having the career fair where they could, like Renee, you'd be able to put your resume in, they'd be able to interview on the spot, and then even walk away with a tentative, hey, we're really interested in you. Let's see if you can pass the clearance and so forth. But you get hooked in, and you have that strong connection with a tentative interest or tentative offer, right? And so that's really useful, especially in the cyber area. And there's others like procurement, contracting, and so forth, hard to fill positions. And then, of course, going with the intelligence community, they don't have the same competitive hiring barriers that you do for like defense and many of the other agencies. So those job fairs are incredibly important to go to and be able to walk away with the likelihood of a strong connection or possible I don't want to say interest. I don't know that you'd actually get a job offer on the spot because there's so much involved, but they'd have a real strong connection with a tentative interest in you.
Right. And moving you forward. So you're not just a piece of paper in a big applicant tracking system. You're actually a human. You spoke to someone, and the potential for you to move forward.
Yeah.
And then the third thing that I took away from the comments that you made, Espinda, and I think this is one is very, very important, is the networking aspect. And we drill this in every single time we have a live. We talk about how critical it is to network your way into various opportunities. And what you said really resonated, because you let your neighbor know, let people know that this is what you're doing, because you never know who's connected to who. Mm-hmm. And if your neighbor that you didn't know how, either works in the federal government, knows somebody, you just never know. And staying connected, like offline, I consider offline meaning friends, family, neighbors, things like that. And then online. So connecting with Alex on this podcast, connecting with you, Casey, connecting with me, like making the connections, using social media, weaponizing it, and using it to your advantage to connect with folks who could get your foot in the door or give you insight to opportunities, things like that. It's just so very important. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to discount that, because people tend to go to the websites, they go to they do all that, but then they forget, or they just don't network, or they may not even know how to, or feel funny about doing it, or, they're natural introverts and don't know how to strike up a conversation online or offline or whatever. But it's just so, so important to do that.
Yeah. And even cold calling with that network. So, instead of looking through the web to find a job and then apply and then get connected to a job, really working for an organization that lights you up, that has a mission that you're very interested in, something that you're really prepared for, your studies, your experience, or you're going to be studying it. You're an intern and you're going to be studying in that career field. What agency really aligns with your interests, your values, what your aspirations, and then finding people who work there and asking them, is this an organization that people thrive at, that they're challenged, that they find rewarding, and ask them those kinds of questions. And so that you just don't apply and then become a victim of getting hired to an organization that you have no interest or familiarity with. So really the best thing to do is go for something that you're interested in and connecting with people. And that's really easy to do nowadays. It is so easy. Every organization has some sort of webinar or public forum to connect with if you don't know anyone. And, picking up the phone is a great way, or phone or whatever device you have is a great way to connect with those organizations.
Such valid points. So valid. So Alex has been putting up some links here that I want to share on here. So Alex put up our federalcareerconnection.org event. So there's a Managing Your Career in the Federal Government with Laura Allen, that event. So I'm assuming that's for people that are probably more direct to people who are already inside the federal government, but likely open to everyone and very, very useful across the board. Just like I was on the webinar a couple of weeks ago with the Bureau of Labor Statistics. It was just very interesting to see what careers are upcoming. You know, I like to pay attention to, okay, what are we going to be recruiting for in the next 5 years, the types of talent that's needed, the skills that are needed, you know, and how many open positions there will be. So it was very, very informative. So I can imagine that this one will be too. And then the other focus group and season wrap with Federal Career Connection. So that's another link. Thank you, Alex, for putting up all this info. So that's another event. So the final 2 events of the year, those events. And Alex also put you out here, Katherine, Casey, your consulting group, CoffmanCoaching.com. So, I mean, Casey is a wealth of knowledge. I'll be making that connection too after y'all be reaching out. Get some teens in there.
And another site that's useful is just even opm.gov, because there's really useful information on that website, not only about how to apply and so forth, but they do offer 1-hour sessions on how to write a resume, how to conduct not conduct an interview, but you know, what's an interview like and how to prepare for an interview. And they offer classes once a month or twice a month. But I should have looked that up before I came on. But that's a really good site, OPM, and they do offer training classes.
Yeah. That's one thing I do love about the federal government space. There's so many ways of, you know, there's so much insight as to what to do. It's almost overwhelming because there's a lot of it.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, depending on what information or where you go, or what webinar you go to, there's a lot of information, but it's fantastic because it's a lot of free information.
Yeah.
And with some time and some research skills, you can really get in there and connect with folks. So that's cool.
And you know, just you're bringing up a really good point that sometimes, and I guess maybe I'm reflecting, these are my shadows that I'm sharing with you, is that when I have to do research for how to write a resume or a thank you letter or a cover letter, I'll research things until I'm exhausted. And I'll, like the stack of books I have behind me, I'll have a stack of papers, of basically electronic papers of too much information. You just know what you know. Get your answers. Get your answers to your questions, and then move on, right? So I just caution, to your point, there's so much information out there. You could spend too much time doing the research. Just make that decision and move on. People would have the information that they need once they've done that basic research. Don't hold yourself back because you don't think you have enough information.
So just do it.
Yeah.
Nike slogan. Just do it.
Yeah.
So Clarence says, thanks for the information because of all these links that Alex is providing. Folks, I just want you to know we only have a few more minutes here with Casey. She's doing us a huge favor by being here tonight. So ask your questions or else we will end early. Make sure you ask your questions. This is an open forum to be able to get your questions answered. So Casey, in terms of your consulting, I'm curious about this. The types of things like the people will connect with you. People always do when it comes to these live streams. Who are the types of folks that do you consult with individuals? Do you usually work with companies? If someone wanted what kind of services do you provide?
So when people one-on-one connect with me and ask me questions, I'm happy to do that. And I don't charge. Like, for example, I'm an instructor at Graduate School USA, and I work with people who are in different programs who are like expiring. inspiring to be an executive and so forth. And so I answer individuals' questions, and it can be from people in Texas or Arizona, the state of Washington. They're really all over the place that have connected with me, and they just want to know some questions, have some questions about how to apply, what does a resume look like, and very, very specific. But as far as who do I work with, I work with the State Department, and I do coaching for foreign service officers, for people that are located in overseas environments, both the locally hired employees and American supervisors. I've also worked with, and I currently work with senior executives that work in the private industry. So I work with a number of female executives here in the DC area and in New York. And these are usually groups of 8 to 10 women, and meet with them once a month. But I also work, my husband and I have a program called Senior Executive Service Success Academy. I can't even say it. I'm getting a little tired. Senior Executive Success Academy, SES Academy. And this is where we work with brand new executives, people who are new in the executive career field, and how to succeed. Because you have a 1-year probationary period and you have a lot coming at you. So we work with those executives on how to succeed. So it's a 6-month program. But I hope that answers your question without sounding
Absolutely.
like I'm marketing myself.
No. I want you to, and B, I wanted to find out so that, because people will reach out and may say, I'm interested in your services, or I'd like to hire you. And so we just want to make sure that folks are aware of the levels of folks, the levels of people that you work with, that, a brand newbie college grad likely going into an executive role, probably not the right fit. But if someone's a GS-15, making that step could be the right fit for you. But it sounds like it's mostly that most of the work that you're doing is partnering with organizations versus like one individual reaching out saying, I would like to work with you for 6 months or something like that.
Yeah, I find it to be more effective working with organizations. I really stay away from Facebook, and I'm not active on LinkedIn and others. It's too exhausting. So I just try to step away from the keyboard and how can I provide a service for these different pockets. But I do get a number of questions of friends who say, hey, my daughter's getting ready to graduate from high school or from college. Can you look at their resume or whatever? I do that all the time, and happy to do that.
Awesome. So we have a question from YouTube. And this person, Rick Queen, it looks like 2099, says, thanks, Casey. I spent 15 years in DC IT security contracting, but I'm now trying to break into San Fran, Silicon Valley cyber. It is very different. Any suggestions?
Yeah. Oh, that's a really interesting perspective, moving from the federal government to private industry, because there's a lot of different nuances for applying. Their resumes are different. Their interview processes are completely different. So talking to someone in the HR arena to find out how do if you found one organization or whatever the organizations that you're interested in, how do they screen their applicants? Some people organizations provide a variety of assessments before they even talk to you. So find out what their process is. And again, going back to that networking, finding individuals, because that's where the career fields are and the opportunities are of being able to bring people in without the federal hiring process. The direct hire connection world is in private industry. And so talking and networking and having recommendations, having a letter or two or know people that you can go to that will be able to be your resource for those solid recommendations would be very useful for you.
I would also add in to definitely make the connections on LinkedIn, because there is a huge network of folks that are Silicon Valley, San Fran area, the Bay Area, all of that on LinkedIn. Huge connection of people on LinkedIn. So if we're not connected, definitely connect with me. And I know I'm connected to quite a few folks on the West Coast, and there are definitely networks of people, especially on LinkedIn, where you can start to build the networks out there, because yes, it is very different. It is very, very different on the West Coast versus, or the Bay Area, some of these Bay Area startup companies and companies in general versus the, the DC IT security contracting space, for sure. Great question. So Casey, I'm not seeing any more questions.
Okay.
And I know that you are doing us a huge favor by even being here tonight.
It's an honor and really a pleasure. I've had such a great time. So thank you, Renee and Alex so I'm getting tired. I'm so sorry. I really appreciate Crystal. Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to participate. And I hope there was value to yourself, Renee, and to the members.
Absolutely. Like I said, personally will be in touch one-on-one to connect with you. And I know that the network here is in the audience. I know that they will get value from this. It'll be on YouTube. It'll be on LinkedIn. So if they're not here tonight, they will likely watch and maybe reach out to you, in the coming weeks and months. But like your experience is so invaluable, and being at so many different agencies, because sometimes you hear from people who are at like one agency or one space, but to be at that level in so many various agencies, I know there's so many perspectives that you've seen that you can bring, that you brought to the table here. So this was very, very helpful. And we learned some new tools. We learned about, I learned some new tools. I don't know about anybody else, but I learned about all those new websites. So
yeah. If I can just say, Renee, you touched on a really important point, that is one area that people talk to me about, is that they've worked for one agency and they've stayed there. There's over 2 million employees in the federal government. So the employer is the federal government, not just that one organization. And people will stay in one organization for a very long time. And that is great, for that longevity and dedication and all of that. But if people are really interested, don't be fearful. Really, it's just an organization, and you will learn the new language or the new terminology. People travel. They travel overseas. It's different overseas. There's a different language. They drive on a different side of the road, perhaps, or whatever. And you adjust. Going from one federal agency to another, you'll adjust. It's really worthwhile growing. And as a military spouse, that's how I was able to get that diversity of experience and get the career that I was really fortunate to have.
For sure. Now, Maurice says he definitely needs resume assistance for the federal side. So Maurice, connect with Federal Career Connection. Casey, thank you again. I cannot thank you enough for being here today. I will be in touch. And folks, everyone else that's here, as you all know, Breaking Into Cybersecurity CISO Thursdays is tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern. Make sure you are here. We have a special guest. Chris Foulon will be here. And I think James Azar might be back tomorrow. I think we're having a whole crew. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. So subscribe below, YouTube channel, and follow me on LinkedIn, and follow KC on LinkedIn, follow Federal Career Connection on LinkedIn, follow all of us on LinkedIn, and have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.